we're very much closing in on the 5th-year anniversary of the first ever BKFC event, and that went down on June the 2nd, and very excited to be talking to an individual who competed that night, and always good getting to talk to this individual, getting to chat with Joey Beltran today. How's your day going, man? Hey there, Joey. How's your day going so far?
It's been going good, just relaxing, enjoying the holidays.
Yeah, I love hearing that for sure, and glad you're having a good holidays there. I guess, one of the first questions I have with this whole, project I'm working on, what were your, first thoughts when that bare-knuckle boxing offer came your way in mid-2018? Because obviously the scene wasn't what it is nowadays, so, what were the first thoughts when you got that BKFC 1 fight offer?
Well, I had already been knowledgeable of the sport of bare-knuckle boxing. I was a fan of it, watching on the internet, even the old Irish Traveler videos, and the families like the Joyces and stuff like that. So I was a fan of that, and then Gypsy Boy Jimmy McCrory. So I had known about it, and I was actually interested in it already. And so when the opportunity came up, I said, "Oh, that sounds fun."
Yeah, well, that's the cool thing about it, because there was a certain presence of it in the UK, like you said, and BKB was around too, and everything like that. And a good shout out to the Joyces and everything like that. I was a fan of that Knuckle movie, but I guess you being a fan and kind of knowing the scene, I would think you were quite excited when a bare knuckle event was coming to America.
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, it was just coincidentally worked out because I had gone about 18 months without fighting or so. I thought I was retired. And then I took a big money grab fight out in Russia, and then came back and I was motivated. I started training. And for whatever reason, I couldn't find any regional shows, local shows to give me an opportunity. I don't know, maybe they thought I would have a high price tag or something like that. But for whatever reason, I couldn't find a show. And then my old coach hit me up randomly. He's like, "Hey, you wouldn't be interested in doing this bare knuckle stuff, would you?" And I said, "Yeah, I actually would. That sounds fun."
Yeah, for sure. And obviously knowledgeable about it beforehand. Was the, initial training preparations for that first one a little bit different, or did you kind of have a similar camp to what you would have preparing for an MMA fight?
Yeah, I just did all boxing, that's all. It's real simple. Just did a boxing training camp, and if anything, it was a little easier on the body, for me at least. Jiu-jitsu and grappling and wrestling and all that, that's, I think, the hardest part of the body. For heavyweights at least, I would think so. And then, so, you take that out and then just do all boxing. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, and historically significant too, because we were talking about, there was a bare knuckle scene in the UK, but it had been over a century since a bare knuckle boxing event happened in America. And we've talked before about, John L. Sullivan and his significance and all that. So did you feel as you were approaching that fight, you were a part of something historically significant, at least in America, for the sport?
Yes and no. Because it's at the end of the day, I really didn't have much time to give too much thought about the historical significance, because I had to get in a bare knuckle fight with Tony Lopez, and I knew that I was going to be crazy. And so I had to first and foremost focus on that. But after the fact, and then especially recently, so looking back on what the significance was to the sport, and where I stand personally, like historically, it's pretty cool, you know. You know, but in the actual moment, like the actual night, per se, you know, I was focused on that, on the physical fight.
Yeah, for sure, and that ended up being such an incredible fight you had there. And Tony Lopez, I mean, you talk about your profile in the sport. He's gone on to do some impressive things in bare-knuckle boxing as well. Like, what are your, I guess, recollections of the actual fight itself? Because it ended up being one of the most classic, like, bare-knuckle fights that we've seen in the modern era.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's like, it's up for argument and debate. You know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, like, as far as, like, what the most significant fight was in BKFC, and a lot of people will say that one. A lot of people will say the Artem Lobov and Jason Knight fight, which was a great fight, don't get me wrong, but I mean, like, I always say, like, hey, man, if me and Tony didn't come out and set the house on fire that night, there might not have been a Artem Lobov Jason Knight fight. Because that first show was kind of weird, you know? It was kind of like, you know, it had that, like, big knockout, Sam Shoemaker, which was kind of cool, but kind of lame at the same time. It's weird, you know? And then it had, like Beck's fight was kind of good, but it was, like, kind of one-sided. And it was, like, real, kind of, like, almost, like, hot and cold, if you will, like in the mood in the arena when we walked out. And then we walked out and we just started getting it on and blood started flying. And by the third round, the whole place was on fire and the atmosphere was just electric. Like, you feel it in the ring. And, you know, and that's like what set up everything. I mean, it's like, you know, it's crazy. Like how that, like, launch padded the whole game and the whole sport and everything from that one night, and then everything, you know, we just caught, the organization caught its rhythm, and we haven't looked back ever since.
Yeah, and that's well put, because I remember how people were kind of talking about bare knuckle back then. There was a lot of question marks with it being the first, like, event in America in quite a while, and I think people were kind of wondering, like, is this going to be like a one-off, like, curiosity event, like, see how all of this goes. So yeah, I mean, having like a performance like that, which was like, I think the first like widely shared fight that people were getting into, I think, like you said, really set the tone for things to come.
Yeah, man, it was pretty fun during the actual fight, and then afterwards it was like, yeah, I remember Bobby Gunn coming up to me and like grabbing my hands. And he's like, bless these hands. He's like, you have no idea what you did for this. You have no idea what you did for us. I was like, oh, thank you. That's pretty cool. And, yeah, man, so it was really cool. I mean, shout out to Tony Lopez. You know, you have to have a willing dance partner, obviously, to fight that kind of fight. And, you know, so it was really definitely surreal to be a part of. And the crazy part is that we were the swing bout. You know, like, it's not, we weren't even in the actual tournament. You know, we were the alternate bout in case somebody got injured or whatever. You know what I mean? Then we would slide into the tournament.
Yeah.
So, you know, that being said, that even adds more elements to the story, because, like, imagine if our fight didn't get on the TV broadcast. That's crazy. But we did, so it all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, and we talked about like the actual fight itself. I guess I'm curious about the atmosphere of like the fight day. Like, how did it feel like coming up to the arena on the day of the fight? Was there a certain unique kind of vibe backstage, or was it maybe similar to some other past fights you've had MMA related?
It was definitely like an element of stepping into the unknown. Like kind of didn't really know what was going to happen. And then the first fight was Arnold Adams and BJ Linderman, and like Arnold, I think, stopped him in the first round or at the end of the first round or something like that, but just like sliced him up. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is, yeah. But there was no sense of like backing out or anything like that. It was like, oh fuck, like this shit's real. Like, all right, well, basically a street fight. Like you just gotta get them up and get them up fast. And so, you know, but yeah, man. Like I said, it was a beautiful recipe with myself and Tony Lopez. Like our history that we had, the fact that we had already fought 2 times in MMA, and really did not like each other. We're respectful, but did not like each other. You know, and so that was great. And then, you know, the way the show worked out, just like chronologically, and then all of a sudden we were in the co-main event, the co-main event spot because of the timing and everything. And like I said, man, we just got. It's like they tossed the underhand. They tossed the underhand to us, and we hit it out of the park.
So do you really think that maybe like changed the notion of like how the matchmakers were positioning you? Because like you said, it was almost like a reserve bout kind of situation, but I feel like that performance really like shot you in a big way up in the, I guess, hierarchy of BKFC, because I mean from there on out you were taking on like the biggest contenders and always in like pretty prominent spots. Like, do you think that performance really like totally changed like whatever idea BKFC may have had for you?
Yeah. I mean, because it's like, it definitely was not, so it was like, yeah, I understand. I fought in the UFC, and I fought in the UFC for 10 fights in 4 years, so I was there for a good amount of time, you know, but I wasn't one of the recruits. I wasn't like a Chad Mendes or Mike Perry or anything like that. Like I said, like our fight wasn't even scheduled to be on a TV show, you know. So it was kind of like, well, we can get this guy, so let's put him on the show. And then after that fight, yeah, things changed and the relationship changed, obviously, and then shortly thereafter, like I won the world title and things all worked out, you know. I always when I tell you, I was like, yeah, I tried the whole bare-knuckle thing, and then I turned out to be pretty good at it. And so, you know, been doing it for the last 5 years. Or 4 years, whatever the case may be. But yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, it definitely changed everything, so, in a good way.
And obviously you took to the sport very well and accomplished some great things, but one of the questions I've kind of had with the whole thing, like I'm kind of curious, like what was the feeling like landing that like first bare-knuckle punch? Did it differ a great deal from MMA? I mean, obviously the cushioning's not there. Did it feel like a great deal different, or did you kind of adapt to it and figure out what you needed to do pretty quick?
Oh, so like, no, I remember like for lack of better terms, it hurts the same as getting hit with a MMA glove. It feels the same. And then, but the only thing is, like, if you catch one clean, you're gonna get cut. And then all of a sudden, like, I'll remember that. Like the first time that I got cut wide open was at the end of the 4th round with Tony Lopez, and he hit me, and it split over my eyebrow, right over my nose. I was on my eyebrow over my nose, and I'll always remember that feeling of the cold wind hitting my hitting the open flesh of my forehead. Like, it was like, boom, I got hit, and all of a sudden it was cold, like right there where... I've heard people say you feel the warm blood. Like, no, I felt cold because it was like, you know, the wind was hitting my white meat, per se.
Yeah.
So, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, probably already somewhat cold at the Cheyenne Ice and Event Center anyway, but the cut making it that much colder, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
And Wyoming seemed very important, especially in the earlier days of BKFC. Like, I guess, can you speak to the importance of that state for the growth of, you know, bare knuckle, at least in America? Because it seems like a lot of those earlier events were kind of held there.
Yeah, I liked it when I went there, for sure. I went there, and then Mississippi. I mean, that's kind of like where it first... Event number 2 was in Mississippi. I think those were the first 2 places that obviously played a huge role. Like, I won the world title in Mississippi, so I definitely have a special place in my heart for that spot. And yeah, I mean, it's just like you have to be grateful for those initial states that gave us a chance.
Yeah, and as we're kind of talking about that, I mean, 5 years after the fact, like we're getting close to that point in June of 2023. Like, can you speak to, where the scene is at now versus like where bare knuckle boxing was back then? Because it seems like the growth has been, huge.
Hello, hello?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could speak to the growth of bare knuckle in the last like five some odd years from the first events. It seems like it's grown a lot.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's grown by leaps and bounds. It's just, it's crazy in a way, but I mean, it's something honestly like I saw from the beginning because I've said this multiple times in different areas. Like, it's just like society these days. There's so many people that get offended, and so people are struggling. They have to be politically correct, or they're getting in fights on Facebook and going on huge rants on social media, and standing on their soapbox, and like I said, so easily offended. And so it's like this is the perfect outlet. It's a perfect outlet for people to just like get off the stress and just watch. It's basically a beautiful violence, man. Organized street fight. And it's like another thing too is like here we are in 2020, about to be 2023. And I think UFC made its debut in 1992 or something like that. But whatever the case may be, it's a long time, right? And you think, oh, UFC's like mainstream, whatever the case. Yeah, it's mainstream now, you would think. But I'm telling you, man, I'll be watching UFC events in a bar, local bars and stuff, or restaurants, or like Buffalo Wild Wings, something like that. And the minute the fight goes to the ground, people in the bar will still start yelling, "Oh, get him up! Stop! What is this? This stuff's lame." Or whatever case may be. You know what I mean? So people still don't understand the ground game, or have the patience for it, or appreciation for it. So, BKFC cuts out the middleman, and it's all stand-up, all high-level. I mean, you got a lot of, like I said, it's all high-level violence, and it's on your feet, and it's only two guys using their fists. I mean, my mom can understand that. Your grandma can understand that. And so it's a fist fight. So it's really not that much of a surprise to me that it's grown by so, that it's so huge now. I think it is the right place at the right time, and it's only going to continue to get better, bigger and better.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because it's almost tied into how relatable it can be to people, because I feel like not as many people know what it's like to be, taken down and like what's going on in the jiu-jitsu realm of the game. But like most people have been in at least some semblance of a fist fight. Like obviously you guys are trained professionals and the stakes are much higher, damage much higher, etc. But I feel like most people have been in a fist fight, so they think they can relate to it at the very least.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, like, yeah, people's grandparents can definitely understand what's going on. So, BKFC wouldn't. They're gonna know what is. There's not much to be explained. So, I think that's why it is perfect for what what the public is craving right now.
And it's such a fun event to look back on. Like there's so many people that went on to become some sort of champion, either with the Police Gazette or BKFC, like you mentioned, like Beck Rawlings and Sam Shoemaker, obviously Bobby Gunn, very legendary talent, but you have guys like Johnny Bedford and Reggie Barnett Jr. on the card too, and Arnold Adams went on to have a good career too, so just so many names on the card where you just see where they've gone since in the sport. So fun to look back on it, and it seems like based on what you're saying, you have like a fond memory of that event and a lot of the other fights.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of crazy when you look at the card, the lineup of who fought there and how many people are still fighting. You know, a lot of them, a lot of them. You know, like, so. I mean, I guess credit to Nate Shook. He knew the type of people to recruit because, I mean, yeah, look at the roster of fighters. Look at the lineup of those fighters, and then how many of those guys are still fighting today for the organization. So, yeah, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I kind of wanted to touch on, just we're talking about like the growth of the sport since then, and kind of touching on some present aspects. I was seeing a recent interview with Dave Feldman where he was saying that, you know, you would be more so working with BKFC in like an ambassador sort of capacity now, and, you know, not much of like the fighting so much with BKFC. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Or is that what you're going to be settling into now, more so like a BKFC ambassador role, or are you looking to maybe seek some outside fights? Like, what do you think about that, I guess?
Yeah, you know, I'm interested to see what becomes of that. Me and Dave had a brief conversation back in Miami at the last show. We talked about, you know, my next chapter within the company, because ultimately it's like, you know, this is where I became a world champion. This is where I had an awesome chapter of my career. And, you know, it's unfortunate that it ended the way it did, but, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, I know that I'm not that special. Like, for me to think that Father Time wouldn't catch up with me is, you know, naive or ignorant, whatever the case may be. So the way it ended, oh well, but here we are, and Feldman had expressed to me that he wants to keep me involved with the organization and doing other things. So we have a tentative schedule the first week of January to have a little talk, and we'll see what happens from there. But I'm excited and optimistic to see what that all entails.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting stuff for sure, and it kind of reminds me, in a sense, of the recent kind of, well, I mean, not the recent situation, but like back when, like, you know, Bonner and Griffin had their big fight, and then Dana White hired them, like, thereafter to kind of be ambassadors, like, when they were put in the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. And we were talking about how your Tony Lopez fight really, you know, set the tone for bare-knuckle, at least in America. So it's cool that you had such an influential fight and then a great career thereafter, and now looking to be in that ambassador role. So I guess kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I totally like that comparison.
Yeah, some great stuff for sure, and everything like that. And I really appreciate the time. It's always great getting to talk to you, Joey. But I guess as we're kind of like wrapping up, is there any like parting thought you might want to add, like any kind of interesting anecdote from that first BKFC event, or even really just any time in the bare knuckle boxing journey, like anything you might want to kind of add as a parting thought as we're wrapping up?
You know, I just always remember, like, when people would ask me about, you know, how do you prepare, or how do you mentally get ready for those bare knuckle fights? And, you know, what's the difference between that and MMA? You know, and I would just say that it's a matter of having full commitment, like full level commitment, and being comfortable with the pain and the violence that is about to erupt. And if you're okay with that, if you're really, really okay with that, well then, bare knuckles for you. And if not, if you have any kind of second thought about it, well then you should probably do something else. And that's what I would always tell people. Like, yeah, you have to have full level commitment. Like, no stepping back, no pulling back whatsoever.
Well, that was certainly something you showed time and again when you got out there in your combat sports career. Such a, you know, intense individual and everything like that, and such a great night at BKFC 1. And I mean, you had such a quality Hall of Fame career after that. So just all that being said, thanks a lot for coming on and being part of this project. And you have a good rest of your night, man. It's always good getting to talk to you there.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.